Greetings and welcome to Conversations at Noon on the Connecticut Freedom Trail. This is the year in review, which means this is our last show for the year of 2024. Let me get started with our introductions before we jump into this fun-filled packed show for today. In 1995, August, the General Assembly made the Connecticut Freedom Trail a law to exist to tell the stories of the contributions of Black and African Americans to the making of the great state of Connecticut. A year later, in 1996, September to be exact, it opened in 60 towns with 30 sites. Today, we are upwards of 70 towns and 170 sites and growing. The mission of the Freedom Trail is to have an acknowledgement, whether it be a private home, a public building, monuments, ancient burying grounds, head plaques, and anything that will acknowledge where a historical event has taken place. Today, we are going to do a year in review to talk about the things that has happened on the Connecticut Freedom Trail throughout this year. And this year, it was a great year. Another year for the Connecticut Freedom Trail to get great exposure, to be seen more out into the public, and to get the public's buy-in to understand the importance of this Connecticut Freedom Trail. So now we're going to start right now. Oh, before we get started, let's do a little housekeeping. Please do our surveys. Let us know how we're doing. Let us know what you would like to see. You can ask us any questions or comments throughout the program on whatever social media platform you are on. So now let's get started with the show. We're going to start with a program of pictures, and we're going to look at those, and we're going to talk about what was happening during this year. All right, we're going to start with Farmington Historical Society. The Farmington Historical Society was known as the Grand Central Station of the abolitionist movement, and they hired the Great Heart Griot to revamp their Amistad tour. And the tours went from being just a few times a year to a seasonal tour from the spring all the way into the fall. And here you see the Great Heart Griot introducing it, as well as my husband, Kelvin Todd, playing the role of, I think, Reverend Pennington. And we can check with Andre later. He will let us know exactly the role that he is playing. All right, next one. And here, this was a fun event here at the old State House. This was Telling Black Narratives panel, and we had descendants and we had genealogists that would join us to talk about the importance of why we need to make sure Black narratives are being told, but not only being told, but being told by the descendants and those who the stories represent. We have John Mills and his beautiful wife, Erica, who is of the Alex Breon Corporation. And I'm sure John is familiar to some of you, but we'll hear from him a little later as one of our guests. And he is going to go into some of the work that he and his corporation does to help with making sure these Black narratives are being known, as well as some of the historical places. He does a lot of work there. So we will hear more about that. And then we have Miss Connie Royster. She is the descendant of Judge Motley Baker. She does a lot to keep her aunt's legacy alive here in Connecticut and throughout. And we are going to hear a little bit more about some exciting news from the judge. Here we have the Black Narrative Committee, only 3 of us. There's about 11 of us. It is a diverse group where we are working together. We're a subcommittee of the Connecticut Freedom Trail. And in this picture, you have myself, John Mills, and Andre Kitt, when the committee did a presentation at Connecticut Central State University at the Connecticut League of Museums annual conference. And there we got to present to everyone the work that we are working on as a Black Narrative Committee to help people understand why it is so important to not only tell the narratives, but to tell them respectfully and correctly. And we are going to hear a little bit more about the Black Narratives Committee a little later on and their mission as well. Here we have the Fortune mural. Last summer, last August 23, the man Fortune, his gravesite was installed onto the Connecticut Freedom Trail. A very interesting and fascinating story about the man Fortune and how, although he was disrespected for over 200 years with his bones traveling internationally and being held in the Mattatuck Museum until it was brought to light by the NAACP and a few others, he was finally placed in a respectful and proper burial at the Riverside Cemetery, and he was then established onto the Connecticut Freedom Trail 11 years later with the help of John Mills. And what happened here with the Fortune mural, I cannot, the words escape me. The day was so beautiful, and it was very memorable in the energy that was there from the community. It was a community project that I had the pleasure of being a part of. I didn't do as much work as John or Katiana, but it was nice to be connected to the project and to lend a helping hand wherever I could. And it was a beautiful day. That Fortune mural, this picture does not do it justice. You have to see it in person. It is in Waterbury. It is behind the rec center. It is painted on the rec center. And the artist, Katiana Jarba Smith, she did this, but she also invited the community. And to have the community and the young ones come out to play a role and to be a part of making this mural, it electrified the audience, and the students there, the community, they loved it. So if you get a chance and you're in Waterbury, go by the youth center and see this beautiful, beautiful mural. And here on the right, we have support from the community as well as the CFT members. We have Paula Mann Agnew, the executive director of the Amistad, and then we have one of our community leaders on the Connecticut Freedom Trail. And that young lady in the stripe there, that is the artist, Katiana Jarbath Smith. Beautiful day. Here, we had the pleasure, myself and Miss Nicole Thomas, we're CFT committee members. We had the opportunity to travel to Philadelphia to do a presentation at the conference of the Slave Dwelling Projects. It's their 8th conference, and it was held in Philadelphia, and we got to do the presentation about slavery here in New England. And we got to give the Connecticut Freedom Trail a little more exposure outside of its 4 walls of Connecticut. Here you have some historical giants in the field of telling history and keeping it alive. You have Cheney McKnight, you have Nicole, myself, and I can't remember these 2 ladies' names. This is horrible. It'll come to me in the middle of the show and I'll come back and I'll tell you. And then we have here historian Keith Stokes out of Rhode Island, the keeper of God's Little Acre, as well as a historian. And he has worked on many different projects, historical television programs, to make sure the truth is being told when these stories are being reenacted. And then we have Darlie Marshall, who is also, I would say she's connected to the Freedom Trail because of the work that she and John Mills did. And we'll talk about that a little later. John will bring that to the fore and we will discuss that. But it was a fun time at the conference, and we got to meet many different people from across the country who were in the work of trying to make sure the Black narrative is being told from the Black perspective. Then we were at the Big E. The Big E was a lot of fun. It was my first time as the outreach director there, and it was definitely a day to be remembered. I was setting up the table, and all of a sudden I hear this voice calling my name. And when I turn around, it is the Lieutenant Governor, Susan Bicewicz. She and I have been at several of these events where we've been honoring different sites for the Freedom Trail. And it was a pleasant surprise to see her. And she wanted to take pictures with us to make sure that people knew that she supported the Connecticut Freedom Trail. Then on the right, we have Miss Aaliyah Red from Channel 3 Eyewitness News on the weekends. She was there and we had a wonderful conversation, and we're hoping to be able to do more with Aaliyah in the future in regards to bringing more exposure to the Connecticut Freedom Trail. And then last but not least, as I was packing up for the day, I was told I had to hurry up and get down off of the steps to come down. Someone wanted to see me, and lo and behold, it was Governor Ned Lamont. And so that was a beautiful, beautiful thing to also meet him there and to know that he follows our work here on the Connecticut Freedom Trail, and he was happy about the work that we were doing. So it was a fun day at the Big E. We're going to talk a little bit more about that in the show with Andre. He was there with me, and that was another great day, and we were able to get much more exposure of the Freedom Trail. A lot of people walking through. It was an international crowd, so we got to expose the Freedom Trail a little bit more, not only locally and not only just over the state line, but we got to tell people from different walks of life and different parts of the country, as well as a few people out of the country, about the Connecticut Freedom Trail. So we're getting it, guys. We're getting there. We're getting more exposure for the Freedom Trail, and we're letting people know about this jewel in Connecticut. Then here we have in August, Captain Bill Pinkney. He was a stalwart for the Amistad. He was a sailor on it. He was the first Black man to sail around the world solo. He passed away, unfortunately. And so we see here Paula Mann Agnew, the executive director of Discovering Amistad. She was paying tribute at a function that happened at Mystic, where the Amistad schooner is housed in off-season. In the background, you have the Amistad Committee President, Miss Kai. She was there as well. And that too was, it was a solemn event, but it was one that was It spoke to the character of Bill Pinkney and his love of sailing, as well as his dedication to the Amistad. So thank you so very much, Paula and Kai. Here, throughout the year, I do different events. I'm at different tables, and I get tables, and I'm able to bring more and more people awareness about the Freedom Trail. At the top left-hand corner here, where you have the Connecticut Freedom Trail table, that is Hartford Business Day at the state capitol, not the old state house, at the state capitol, where each year in the month of between May and June, they do a Hartford Business Day, and there is where all sorts of businesses throughout Hartford are on display. You have restaurants, you have health insurance companies, you have schools, you have dancing. Different people and different businesses that are situated here in Hartford make their way to that day and get the exposure and the support that they need. At the bottom, that gentleman there, believe it or not, he was one of the first people I met when I moved to Connecticut. He was my 6th grade teacher, Mr. Leslie Perry. I could not believe he remembered me. And the way I know that he honestly remembered me, he remembered my country thick accent and how he would always help me to not be ashamed of my accent when I first got here. So it was really great to see Mr. Perry and knew that he actually remembered me all these years later. And on the end here, we have the Connecticut Farmers Market in East Hartford. And there I would go and spend a lot of time there with the different vendors. And I got to expose the Freedom Trail and give out information and pamphlets at the farmers market each week. And then in the middle for Juneteenth, the Connecticut Freedom Trail was still active and busy. We were at the Joshua Hempstead houses down in New London, and I got to give more exposure to the Freedom Trail there. And the Hempstead houses are on the Connecticut Freedom Trail. So throughout the year, when the opportunity presents itself, I definitely make sure I am out in the community letting people know about the Freedom Trail and why it is so important and the roles that they can play as well. One thing that's not listed here or not shown here, during February for Black History Month, I did a presentation for the Cohen Law Firm out of Bridgeport, and they were very excited to learn more about the Freedom Trail, but they were also happy to know that their benefactor, someone who had established the law firm years and years ago, he played a role in helping another one of our Connecticut Freedom Trail sites, the Mary and Elizabeth Freeman Center, get the establishment that they needed to be legally recognized here in the state of Connecticut. They did not know that, and they were quite happy to learn the role that their firm played in helping one of the sites. So I was able to not only introduce them to the Connecticut Freedom Trail, but I was able to also show them their connection. And I was also able to help them see the different sites around their area. And so they were planning to do different trips to go and see the different sites in their towns, Danbury, Stratford, Bridgeport, in those areas. Then we had a wonderful Amistad connection at Montauk Island in New York. Before the schooner made its way to Connecticut, it actually made a stop at Montauk at Culloden Point in 1839. And the Southampton Historical Society and a few other notable groups got together and wanted to commemorate the landing of the Amistad at Culloden Point. So as a representation, not only of the Amistad itself, but also as a part of the Connecticut Freedom Trail, myself and Paula Mann Agnew were there to be a part of that great event and to be able to introduce them to the story from the Connecticut point of view. But it was also very important to note that the story could no longer just be Connecticut centered. It is an international story, and Montauk is our next door neighbor in a sense. And so we were able to do that celebration there and to be able to have the community come out. The schooner made its way. I unfortunately did not get there until the weekend, so I missed the festivities of the drumming and the dancing, but I want you to use your imagination and picture this beautiful sandy beach, and out in the ocean, beautiful waves are going, and you have the African dancers and the drummers doing their thing. And to set it all up and to make it really historical and to really bring it home, in the backdrop was the Amistad schooner. And so to be able to see that and to imagine that, I was able to help them to understand an incident that happened at Montauk with Sing Bay, PA. When the schooner set ashore, he was looking for food and was looking for help. Well, before they made it to Culloden Point, they was actually trying to make it to the lighthouse that's over my shoulder there. But the wind pushed them further down, and they ended up at Culloden Point. The event that they did not know about, or the happenings, was when Sing Bay looked out and he saw the U.S. Navy coming toward them. He asked if that was a slave ship, and they told him yes. So he tried to make it back to the schooner before they got there. And what happened was they got close enough that they were literally chasing him in the ocean, and he was avoiding them by ducking underwater and swimming. And he literally stayed underwater for 5 minutes at one of those points. But eventually, after almost an hour, he eventually had to surrender because he got tired. But the point is, they almost did not get him. And then the schooner made its way to Connecticut. So it was really nice to be able to share that history with them, because they didn't know that. And that gave them all the more pride in wanting to tell the story. I got to portray Sarah Magoon, who was one of the children, the 4 children aboard the Amistad. A lot of people did not know that there were children aboard the Amistad because Steven Spielberg lives there on Montauk, and so everyone knows the movie, but they didn't know about the 4 children. So I was able to introduce Sarah Magoon's story, and that brought about much more attention. So that was a wonderful time. And so our hope is to be able to continue to have annual commemoration with the people on the Montauk Island. We don't know what's going to happen, but the goal is to try to make that something that can happen, to continue to bring awareness to the story of resilience and determination. Here we had our 2nd annual gathering of the sites at the Hempstead houses. Our first time we did it aboard the Amistad schooner. And then this year we did it at the Hempstead houses in New London. Our goal is to try to highlight each of the sites and to try to have a gathering 2 weeks before the beginning of Freedom Trail Month, which starts September 1st. And so the goal is to get the sites excited, to work with each other, and to do public events that will allow the public to come and see the places and hear the stories and meet some of the CFT committee members. We had committee members, and we had descendants. We had Jesse Harris and his wife. He is the gentleman standing in the back with the green, and his wife is right in front of him. He came all the way from Boston to be a part of this celebration. So we really appreciate the descendants when they are able to commemorate with us and to come together and to celebrate with us and to share some of those oral history stories that we aren't aware of, that we can add to the sites to bring them to life. Jesse is the descendant of Ham Primus, whose home is in Guilford, if I'm not mistaken. Then we had an adventurous time aboard the Amistad. Joe McGill, he is the founder of the Slave Dwelling Project. Many of you are familiar with his adventures, where he travels all over this country, sleeping in dwellings that our enslaved ancestors had to live in. And some of them were not the best of conditions, but he's bringing awareness so that these institutions or these buildings are not torn down and then history is further erased. And so we have the pleasure of partnering with him on the Amistad and doing one of his sleepovers. And he got to fulfill one of his dreams, which was to sleep aboard the Amistad. That was an interesting evening. We were where the boat is housed in Mystic at Mystic Seaport. And it was a good group of us, and we got to see what it was like to have possibly been aboard the Amistad schooner. Although our conditions were definitely much more suitable than what the Amistad captives had to deal with, it helped you to kind of put things into perspective a little bit when you saw how tight the cabins were. And although we had quote unquote creature comforts, we had the bedding, we had access to modern plumbing. They didn't have any of that. It was just darkness, and there was no comfortability there. So at different times, each of us did different shifts or watches, and we got to reflect, and we got to see what it was like to be aboard that ship, and not in any way reducing what they would have gone through. It just helped to put things into perspective, and it helped you to understand why it is so important that the stories of resiliency and determination, that those stories are brought to the fore, not just the trauma, not just the horrible conditions, but we need to start focusing on the positivity of that resiliency and that determination of our ancestors who refuse to give in or give up, regardless of what those situations were. Because sometimes today, when we find ourselves in those situations, we wonder, where did I get the oomph and the gumption to make it through that? And it's because it's in our DNA. But those stories haven't been told. Those stories have not been exposed as much as they should. And that is why it is so important. The work that I do with the Connecticut Freedom Trail, with the Connecticut Freedom Trail Committee, is so very important. Then we had news coverage throughout the year. We started off earlier this year with Ann Nyberg with Channel 8. She's a great supporter of the Connecticut Freedom Trail, and every chance she gets, she is supporting our event. She is supporting the Freedom Trail, and we are so very thankful for her and her friendship and her desire to make sure we get the exposure we need. So we were with Ann Nyberg, we were with Tim and his crew at Fox 61, and then Ann had John and I come in to talk once again about his projects that are connected to the Connecticut Freedom Trail. And so we appreciate all of the news coverage. Next year, we'll possibly have NBC 30 as well as Channel 3 join us in helping us to further get this information out and to help people understand what those signs that say Connecticut Freedom Trail on the side of the road really mean. So thank you, guys, ladies and gents, for that exposure. We truly appreciate you partnering with us and helping us to do that. Then we had another event at Center Church here in Hartford. Prince Abdul Rahman. Each year, Center Church, along with the Freedom Trail and a few other partners, come together to celebrate Prince Abdul. If you do not know who he was, please, if you get a chance, visit PBS. They have a documentary. It's called A Prince Among Slaves. A fascinating story of endurance, a fascinating story of a man who was a prince that spoke multiple languages, and he was captured, brought to this country, and he escaped, and he tried to get back to his homeland, and he realized that he could not. And so what he did was he made an arrangement with the enslaver that he would help his plantation be profitable, but he was to be respected, and his hair was not to be cut because he had locks, beautiful locks, and they agreed to that. The fascinating part about that story is he did it so well that when an opportunity came for him to get his freedom, the man did not want to let him go. But he ended up getting his freedom. He made a stop here in Connecticut. He went to Boston. He made a journey up and down the East Coast trying to get money to get his family so that he could take them back to Africa where he came from. And the end of that story hasn't really ended because he has multiple descendants. Each year they do a family reunion. One year is here in the U.S. in Natchez, Mississippi, and the next year it is in Africa and his homeland. Unfortunately, he did make it back to Africa, but he died 4 months before he got back to his actual home. Fascinating story, but each year we get to come and commemorate that. Here I am standing with John Quincy Adams' descendant, John Quincy Jr., and we have some of the descendants of Prince Abdul Rahman on the left here. So great. It's a great event and a great commemoration. Thank you, Center Church, Eric Hurst, Andre Kitt, Sheikha Karen, Dr. Gay. Thank you all so much for each year making sure that this event happens and the story is not forgotten. And here we have one of our news sites. We have a couple of our news sites. We have the Berlin Historical Society with Chris Barlow, and we have the New England Air Museum. They have a wonderful exhibit that is solely focused on the Tuskegee Airmen. When you go there, you get to see a nice film about the Tuskegee Airmen. You even get to see the woman, Miss Willa T. Brown, who aided in training these men. You don't hear a lot about the women who trained the Tuskegee Airmen. All of the men, Benjamin O. Davis and the others, get credit, but Miss Willa T. Brown was there, and there was a couple of other women. So hopefully we'll get to see a lot more about that, but she is represented there along with the Tuskegee Airmen. So hopefully you will get a chance to see that. We also had another site. We had 3 more sites added in Colchester. We had the Colchester Burying Ground, the ancient burying ground, as well as their on the Green Monument. There's a beautiful statue there that honors those who fought in the Civil War, and the names of the Black soldiers will also be added to that monument. And there are 3 more sites added. Colchester now has 4 sites. They have the colored school, the Little Colored School there. Here we have the AME Church in Middletown. In Middletown, although it's not the original location, it's the congregation that is really on the Freedom Trail. And so their new location was moved. They moved to a different location in Middletown. And then we have the private homeowner here in Hartford of the actress Miss Hattie, and her home is on Mell Avenue. And that is the homeowner with her plaque to be affixed to the house. Let's see. These are the Colchester sites that I was speaking of. We have in the ancient burying ground, they did, I think, ground penetrating radar where they found 30 graves in the part of the cemetery that was designated for Blacks only. And they are commemorating that and bringing honor to those who are buried there so that they are not forgotten. Here on the town green, you can see the monument where the names will be affixed in regards to the Black soldiers that fought in the Civil War. Here we are having another celebration. The Connecticut Democracy Center, which hosts the Connecticut Freedom Trail here at the old State House, was celebrating their 25th anniversary. And here we have girl power. It was really nice to meet Miss Joanne Nesty. When I first moved to Connecticut, I used to watch her on NBC 30. The news station. And so it was really nice to meet her in person. She's a really kind lady. So it was girl power that day for the celebration, not only of the Democracy Center, but they also spoke about the Connecticut Freedom Trail. Thank you, ladies. And thank you for joining us. Now I am going to have my special guest join us, and they're going to talk a little bit more about some of the slides that you saw. We're going to have Andre Kitt, the Great Heart Griot, as well as John Mills, the Executive Director of Alex Breon Corporation, join me so that we can talk a little bit more about some of the things that happened throughout this year. Hey guys, thanks for joining me.
Hey, Tammy.
Hey.
How's everybody?
Good to see y'all. Thank y'all so much for taking the time. I really appreciate y'all. Y'all helped me do this along with the others on the Freedom Trail Committee. You two are definitely helping me to bring exposure and bring the Freedom Trail to the fore. It's a beautiful jewel in Connecticut, and it's been it's been hidden, but it's getting the exposure it deserves. So I thank you too for the work that you are doing to help with that. So let's start with Great Heart Griot. We had a wonderful time at the Big E. It was a party, to say the least. We got to hang out with the governor, the lieutenant governor, a live band, and a whole bunch of people walking around. So tell us what your experience was from that day and what you appreciated.
Well, as long as you don't show the video of me dancing, okay. Because I thought that I was doing such a good job of dancing. I was partying and having a good time because we were fortunate to have a bandstand right next door to us, a stage right in the yard of the Connecticut Old State House. So people were coming over and clamoring there. And I started partying, and somebody I know, I won't say their name, Tammy Denease, picked up a video. and was shooting video of me dancing. And I thought I was looking pretty good until you showed me that. But anyway,
I forgot about the video because I
the
would have had
music
it.
was really, really good. People just party. It was a party atmosphere. So we had a pretty good showing in our spot. We were right in the portico of the replica of the Connecticut Old State House. So people had to go by us.
Yes.
Which is why we ran out of all of our collateral and ran out of all of our flyers that we were passing out. But people could not go inside of the replica of the Connecticut Old State House building without stopping to see us. So whenever we ran out of all our materials, we were able to then tell them the stories. Mm-hmm. And we saw people coming from all over different parts of Connecticut, as well as from Massachusetts. And wasn't there a family of folks that came through? Remember where they came from? They were
we had several families come through. There was Indiana, there was a California, there was Iowa, and I think Texas.
So we had people from across the country coming through to the Big E. The Big E being the attraction that it is every year. It was my first time there. I was glad to be there for the first time, representing the Connecticut Freedom Trail. So what else happened? Because we did a lot of partying.
Yeah, we did do a lot of partying, but we got a lot of information out there. What I think the highlight for me again is when the lieutenant governor, I heard her scream my name and I'm like, okay, who's that? And I turned around and it was her. It was such a nice surprise that she appreciates the work we're doing and that she is a supporter of the Freedom Trail.
She's a big supporter of the Freedom Trail, and having called us in to do other special projects with her throughout the year, it was like old home week when she saw us. Yeah. Of course, she did not run up to me the way she ran up to you, but that's okay. And the governor, when the governor came up, he said, "Oh, you guys are from the Connecticut Freedom Trail?" We said, "Yeah." He walked away and he came back and said, "I've heard a lot of good things about you guys. Yeah. I'm glad that there's a Connecticut Freedom Trail." So we have his ear. Mm-hmm. So apparently the lieutenant governor has been,
speaking of us, and we appreciate it. We appreciate it. Now, Andre, you're part, as well as you, John, you are a part of the Black Narrative Committee. Talk a little bit about why that committee was formed and why it is so important to the Freedom Trail to have this subcommittee.
So could I just say, first of all, that I joined Connecticut Freedom Trail under the auspices of two different groups, Center Church, and you've shown some pictures from that, and the Farmington Historical Society, and you've shown some pictures from that. And I'm segueing into that about those two sites that are on the Freedom Trail, because they're doing exactly what the Black Narratives team, the new Black Narratives team, has been designated to do, and that is to tell stories from a Black perspective. As we question a lot of things, who should be telling the stories? How should they be telling those stories? Are we actually decolonizing the sites? Are we making sure that we're giving each site what they need? So we ask, we're not just walking around saying, you need to do this, you need to do that. We're asking them, what do you need? Because many times when a site says that that we don't have any Black people here to help put personnel there to tell the stories. So Black Narratives, we're trying to put together, and we are putting together a cadre of tools and a toolbox. John, you can probably agree to that. But I'll just say that Historical Society, Farmington Historical Society, they started doing that. What year did I start with them? 2020. So I've been helping them change the perspective of how they're telling that story. And so groups and sites are already doing that. Center Church is doing it with a lot of their different activities. But and John has been helping us out a great deal as a member of our team. Let me just say all the members of our Black Narratives team, okay? Because I wrote this out, I want to say it now.
We have and it's a diverse group of people.
We have Joni DiMartino. She is the director of Prudence Crandall Museum. We have you, of course, Tammy Denease, director of Outreach at Connecticut Freedom Trail. And we have the brilliant, the famous John Mill. Alex Beyond Corporation. He knows I'm going to do that to him all the time. Paula Mann Agnew, who is the director of Discovery Amistad, Amaris Williams, who is the director of the Connecticut League of Museums, Christine Jewell, who is the coordinator for the 1636 Partnership, which is an affiliation with Center Church, Nicole Thomas. And Nicole Thomas is the director.
She's the assistant director of the Hempstead Houses.
Assistant director of the Hempstead Houses. Nicole, don't get me, okay? Then we have Sally Whipple, director at the Connecticut Old State House. And we have Dr. Eric Hurst, who is at Center Church, and he is the director of justice there. Let me make sure I get everybody. Jeffrey Fletcher, who's the director of the Ruby and Calvin Fletcher African American History Museum. And where is that again?
In Stratford.
Stratford. Okay, I want to make sure I have that right. So we have a very diverse panel team of people that I have a great pleasure of working with. We have a lot of fun doing what we're doing and doing while we're doing that. We did do some collaboration work already. We find ourselves in great demand. The work that we're doing is not landmark, is not pioneering. It's just something. I mean, it's not like this type of work hasn't been needed all along, but we've been doing this for just a short period of time. And we presented at the Connecticut League of Museums 2024 conference, and they're already asking us to come back for 2025, as well as countless other requests to have Black Narratives team from Connecticut Freedom Trail come in and lend a hand as to how to tell these stories. John, I'm going to leave a little bit for you.
Oh, that's all right. That's all right. You guys lead that, so you should be the ones talking about that. I think that the Black Narratives Committee, the opportunity for people to come together and talk about the concepts of how we should be telling these narratives, in and of itself is valuable. Right, because then we all kind of get to a cohesive understanding. We might have differences and disparities, but we share them and come to some place. But also, like you said, historically, these narratives have been told from, not from an African American perspective, not from a descendant's perspective. A lot of the documentation were written by white Americans, and thus when they're told, they're kind of told from that perspective. And it gives us an opportunity, to kind of look at that. Where are these narratives actually pulling from the value of these, to me, heroic African American people, in that they're not telling the narrative in a way that shows their agency or shows their value or their strength. And so, it gives us an opportunity to look at ways to do that more appropriately. So I think the Black Narrative Committee is essential as far as I'm concerned. I think it's doing great work.
Yeah, I agree. I
wanted to say one more thing about Black Narratives. By no means is our panel of people on that team authoritative enough to say, oh, we know it all. We're trying to give it. First of all, we're asking each site, what do you need?
Yeah.
We're doing that. And number two, we are gathering members of an advisory board so that we're not making these decisions by ourselves. We're talking about historians who are already doing this type of work. We want to know what works best for them. How has it been working out for them, as well as going to institution of higher education, because a lot of the historical institutions have been doing this work for a while. So we're not going to reinvent the wheel. We also want to consult with folks as to what are some best practices.
Exactly. And what I love about the Black Narrative Committee, that it is a diverse group of people. It's not just all Black people. It's not just all white. It's not just all women or all men. We have men, women, Black, white. We have the mixture so that we can make sure we're not only getting different perspectives, but that we are being able to include everyone so that an accurate and complete history is told. I know that inclusive is a word that's supposed to cause issues for some people, but and I'm one of those people, because as far as I'm concerned, I'm already here. So what are you including me on? How about belonging? But that's a whole nother show. But I think the work that we're doing is definitely important, like building the vocabulary, helping to see the importance of making sure people understand that what they thought was correct is not actually correct. What they thought was helpful was actually harmful. And we're doing it in such a way that we're helping people to come to those conclusions on their own. We're not telling them, we're showing them both sides. And so now when you have the complete and accurate picture, it's up to you to do the work. And I love the conversations that just comes out of having these meetings. I just love how when we come together, we're able to be ourselves and we're able to say what needs to be said, roll up our sleeves and do what needs to be done. So I appreciate that.
So
yeah, I think that's
go ahead, John. I'm sorry.
No worries. I think that's essential. That, we're able to kind of just say what we think, because as soon as you can't, where's the value in it? Like people are kind of operating within their own, past perspectives. And I think that we were all raised here. That we were all raised with inputs that put white in the center. So I don't even think that the cultural aspect of it is specific to anyone, which is why I think it's great that there's diversity, because we all could be doing that same thing in how we're telling narrative, regardless of culture. And so I think it's great. I think it needs to remain kind of a ability to speak your mind in order for it to be valuable.
Yeah,
well, I do know that here recently we understand that with coming administration, there are going to be some challenges in trying to tell these stories from a Black perspective when Black studies is being attacked on a national stage. So you have Joni DiMartino at Prudence Crandall, who's on Black Narratives team with us, who's in the middle of trying to change the name, and she's changing the perspective of her museum. And I remember when we went there for a meeting, was one of our first in-person meetings at one of the sites. On my way there, I kept seeing signs of a particular person who will be going into the White House. And we know that administration is trying to shut down a lot of Black studies programs. So here she is in the midst of this, trying to make sure that the Black narrative is being told. I think that's courageous, but also at the same time, she's uplifting Prudence Crandall, but doing more than that and changing the name. She's making sure that we know who those Black and brown students were, and we're making them just as much of a hero as Prudence Crandall is. That's what the Black narrative is doing. Wow.
I agree. Well, we're almost out of time. And before we leave the show today, John, I would love for you to speak to some of the projects that you did this year. You did a big project, not only with Fortune Mural, but the cemetery in New Haven with the family there that's been lost, but now has been found. Isaac Hill, I always combine the names of the two individuals, so I might say it wrong again. So I'll let you speak to that and talk about Alex Breon Corporation and the work that it's doing and how partnering with the Freedom Trail, what that does.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that, Alex Breon Corporation had an incredible year this year, and I'm really happy about that. Ultimately, what we do is we do genealogical and historical research into the formerly enslaved, and then into the time in which they lived, so that we can incorporate that into the narrative that we ultimately tell. And then we try to find their current day descendants and give them back their own history, right? And then bring them into the process of, well, how do we honor them? How do we revere them? So they're a part of it. And then we attempt to eject these people in the community where they lived, worked, or died. I wanted to talk a little bit also about, in doing that, it's all collaborative. It's with the current day descendant. It's with the Freedom Trail. It's with that community where they lived, worked, or died. It's all collaborative, right? And I had my own community, a fitness community, before I got into this, and they're even a part of this, right? Like, they gave us some exposure early on in January, February of 2024, so that the Washington Post put into their newspaper about what the Alex Breon Corporation is doing, which allowed us to then get to acknowledging Mary and Thaddeus Newton, Thaddeus was enslaved in North Carolina. His wife was free. She ran away to New York to raise the funds to free him. They moved to New Haven. Then 3 of their sons fight in the Civil War. Alexander Newton, their son William Newton, and their son Stephen. Stephen dies with the 54th Connecticut Colored Regiment. William and Alexander fought with the 29th. And their Thaddeus and Mary Stone had fallen over some 50 plus years ago, was just buried in the ground. So the Alex V. Aaron Corporation was able to kind of tell their story through the Washington Post, then restore their cemetery marker, repair it. And then the 54th came down from Boston. The Connecticut National Guard showed up, and Senator Richard Blumenthal showed up, and we had a really nice ceremony to honor these heroic people, right? And the descendants that I found came from Florida, and the Connecticut National Guard presented them with the folded flag to honor their fallen ancestor. And that site was also placed on the Freedom Trail at that time in June of this year. I'm really proud of that. Again, specifically because of the collaboration and then to bring the story to light. We also, another individual that fought this Connecticut 29th, name was Isaac J. Hill. He was from Woodbury, New Jersey. He came to Connecticut to fight, and then afterwards he went back to Woodbury, died, was buried in a cemetery that was eventually paved over. We, the Alex Brand Corporation, worked to get him a cenotaph and arrange a ceremony in Woodbury, New Jersey, with local officials there, and more collaboration. Right, we had the descendants. The descendants were a part of that ceremony as well, and where it aligns to the Freedom Trail for me, even though this is now a Woodbury story of a man who fought for Connecticut. New Jersey has their own brand new Freedom Trail. They call it the Heritage Trail. They just named their first 32 sites in April of this year. And one of the sites, 2 of the sites that are going to be on the trail are Alexander Newton, the child that was fought in the Civil War, and Mary and Thaddeus Newton, the stone that we repaired. Alexander Newton moved to New Jersey, had a home there. I worked with Dolly Marshall, who's a historian from New Jersey, and we collaboratively, I supported her in getting Alexander Newton's home as one of the first 32 sites on their New Jersey Heritage Trail. And then subsequently, as it relates to Isaac J. Hill, I'm still supporting a councilwoman, her name escapes me now at the moment, in Woodbury, and they're working to get one of the locations where Isaac J. Hill was on this brand new New Jersey Heritage Trail. Back to this concept of collaboration. It's like even cross states, our Connecticut Freedom Trail individuals are working with other individuals in other states to kind of do a similar thing, manage to a similar concept. And so I'm really, really happy and excited about that. We also, in 2023, we were able to get Prince Mortimer, who was an enslaved man in Middletown. We were able to get him on the Freedom Trail for where he used to walk, the street where he used to walk up to get to work, which is, he worked at a rope walk, which was owned by his enslaver. Get that on the Freedom Trail, to get the former location of the rope walk on the Freedom Trail. It's a part of the Prince Mortimer Trail, as well as he was imprisoned at 87 years old at Newgate Prison. So that's on the Freedom Trail as a part of this trail so that we can tell his story there. And then Weathersfield DMV, which used to be a prison, he was transferred there when he was, some 111 or 12 years old. And so that's a part of this Prince Mortimer Trail. In 2024, we worked all this year trying to get one of those locations on the part of this Prince Mortimer Trail, the street where he used to walk every day, a specific corner, the corner of Apollo Avenue and Main Street, them to have an honorary street name for him there. And we worked really hard and eventually were able to get that passed by the Common Council. And we're going to have an unveiling of that street sign on February 1st, 2025, 10 a.m., corner of Apollo and Main. The approval was this year. Ceremony is until the first day of Black History Month in 2025. I'm really excited about that. Another collaborative effort between the city, the Historical Society there, the Freedom Trail participants. It's like a lot of people, the State Historic Preservation Office, that came together for us to be able to get this done. So I'm excited about that. We also commissioned an artist who is painting a portrait of Prince Mortimer, based on what we know about what he looked like. And I traveled to Chatham, UK earlier this year because it's one of the locations of the only remaining full-length rope walk or facility to make rope from the mid-18th century that still exists. And we know that there was this rope walk in Middletown that Prince Mortimer worked at. And so we're using the images I took from the Chatham rope walk in the UK and what we know about what Prince Mortimer looked like to paint him in a rope walk facility. And that's going to be unveiled that same day on February 1st, and will then hang at the Middlesex County Historical Society. So just collaboration with the art community here in Connecticut as well. Lots of collaboration. And there are many other things that are now going on with the Alex Brand Corporation. But that's the kind of stuff that we do. Again, I just really wanted to focus on this idea of collaboration because I think that's the value of the Freedom Trail, right? We come to the Freedom Trail, the committee. All of us are volunteers, and the Alex Brand Corporation makes no money. We're spending money. I'm spending. I don't make money. This is all about passion and purpose, right? It's not about prominence and prestige. We're honoring descendants. We're our ancestors. We're honoring people in the past. And in order to do that appropriately, you've got to have collaborators. You've got to have people next to you. And I think that's the value of the Freedom Trail, the committee, because we're all together, we're all volunteering, we're all talking, we're all hearing about what everybody is doing. And then we're all supporting each other in our efforts to be passionate about honoring these people. And then if we could take that idea and that concept of collaboration externally, like we did with New Jersey, like we're doing in these communities, I think that's where the value happens, right? That's where it happens. It comes outside of ourselves. It's not about us, and we focus on the fact that it's about these ancestors, and we're pointed and deliberate in what we can do there. I think that's where the value happens. So lots going on. I'm really happy about what we were able to do in 2024, and more to come in 2025.
John, thank you so much. You are so right about the collaboration. I love the Connecticut connection in New Jersey. When I first started as the outreach director, I had different heritage sites reach out to me across the country who were just starting. And they were happy to know that the Freedom Trail had already been established. And they made it clear that they're going to be watching what we're doing because they're looking at us as that lantern that we have as our logo to know how to proceed and what to do. So I'm glad the New Jersey connection is there. And I'm looking forward to us being able to, as a committee, as a group, being able to bring these stories to life and those connections to show how, one, we were not a monolith, two, we were still a community no matter where we were. So when one person was seeking freedom somewhere else, they found that community. You know what I mean? So I appreciate those collaborations. I appreciate the work that is done at Alex Brand Corporation because, like you said, you don't make money. Your job and the projects and things that you do is done on a donation basis. And so I appreciate all of the efforts that you do. I love the fact that you were recognized by Kelly Clarkson's show as well as actor Aisha Tyler and how they supported you through the donations to help with the Fortune Project, to be able to have that brought to completion. So it shows how important community is. When the community knows what's happening, knows about this history, then there's a buy-in to want to save it, to want to put it out there to the fore and keep it out of dark places or places where it's hidden, and you got to keep scratching to find it. So I appreciate all of the work that Alex Brion, you and your beautiful wife Erica does, and your family support. I appreciate how you continue to work with us on the Freedom Trail because your work coincides with what we do. So really appreciate that. From Bessie Reyna, one of our Facebook viewers, she says, "Great work, Mr. Mills." As you can see, Andre, he's a fan, so he said, "Good job, John." and you have my support in all ways that I can help. I truly appreciate all that each of you bring. I appreciate the Black Narrative Diverse Committee. I appreciate all of the members of the Connecticut Freedom Trail because, again, like you said, it's volunteer and we do it from passion. It's not because we get paid. It's not for self-promotion. It's not for prominence. It's because of the passion to be able to make sure these important stories are not forgotten. Any last words?
Yeah, everything that you said there, and I just, everything that it happens, with regards to the various things that we're talking about here. Like you said, like Andre said, there's a lot of people. There's a lot of people on the Black Narratives Committee. There are a lot of members to the Freedom Trail. There's a lot of individual players and parts with regards to the efforts Alex Brand has worked on. So it's just too many to name, but it's a community-based thing. I think you have to have a level of passion and selflessness to figure out how to end with a positive result. And I think that's what the people around me have been. That's what the Freedom Trail Committee has been. I think the committee is like is the secret sauce. Those people on that committee are the secret sauce. And yourself, Tim. So I try to find ways to highlight that. It's a collaboration, community, and then supporting each other selflessly on all these efforts is the sauce.
You're right. I like that secret sauce. Yeah, they are, because we have a diverse committee as well. The Freedom Trail Committee is a diverse group of people that comes from different walks of life, and they bring valuable input. And I do appreciate the time that they take from their personal lives, because they do have other jobs. So I do appreciate them taking that time to do that, because it speaks to their passion. It speaks to their dedication. And so it is greatly appreciated. I appreciate all of them for what they do, and all of you. Andre, do you have any final words?
I just wanted to say that I agree with John. He often says, we're just trying to make sure we revere our ancestors. And we're trying to do that above anything else.
Well, thank you guys so very much. I appreciate y'all taking the time out of y'all busy days to be my special guest today on the Year in Review. We have one other question. They want to know what we're looking forward to for next year's Year in Review. Well, guys, all I can say is I will be out in the community, as I always am. I am looking for undiscovered and unknown historical sites that need to be a part of the Freedom Trail, and there's stories that need to be known. So if you see me in the community, reach out. If you have any ideas of historical places or stories or things that happen in a location, please let me know, because that's what I do. That's why I'm in the community, not only to educate about the Freedom Trail, but also to look for sites and places that is deserving to be on this Freedom Trail, so that their story can be uplifted and highlighted as well. I thank you to my friends, John Mills and Andre Kitt. I thank you both so very much. You have been such a great support of me in this work, and I thank you. We have another comment, Kat Smith. She says, so happy to see all the work we're doing. So thank you so very much, Kat.
And thank you, Tammy. Thank you for all you're doing. Thank you for your leadership. Thank you for your role. Thank you for persisting and continuing and being a part of this at all costs. I mean, this is the type of work that, arrows come after.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
So I appreciate it.
Oh, yeah. It's a work that we sometimes feel like we're alone, but when we have the committee that we have, we realize we're not alone. And that's why I'm so thankful for the Connecticut Freedom Trail Committee. I'm thankful for the BNC. I'm thankful for the subcommittees that are being created to further elevate the Connecticut Freedom Trail. There is so much more happening coming up this coming year. We're going to have a author series, a Black author series. We're going to have a children's author series starting January 28th, A Free Woman on God's Earth. It is a book talk with children's author Jana Lees. And then February 25th, we will have another children's author, The Village Coach, a book talk with children's author Bruce Trammell. So please join us January 28th for Conversations at Noon on the Connecticut Freedom Trail. We appreciate everyone taking out the time of their day, because we know everybody's busy, but we appreciate you taking the moment to spend with us so that we can continue the legacy of the Connecticut Freedom Trail. Again, my friends, thank y'all so very much for joining me here today. It is greatly appreciated, and I honor the both of you. So thank you so very much.
Thanks for having me.
Yes, thank you
so much.
All right, everyone out there in social media land, I thank you again for joining us, and we look forward to seeing you in January. Until the next time.